Sagittarius, God is going to remove you from your own family, for this reason. Get ready. Sagittarius, you've always known deep down that you were different, even from the people closest to you. It wasn't always in what they said, but in what they never said. The air shifted when you entered the room. Conversations turned shallow, laughter felt staged. And though you were young, your spirit was ancient, carrying a fire that others could never fully understand. They told you that you were reckless, too restless, too wild. But you were never too much, you were simply too awake for the silence around you. Your family may have wanted you to play small, to follow the path they set, to dim your fire so their world could stay predictable. Yet you stayed. You stayed when they mocked your dreams as unrealistic. You stayed when they belittled your vision of freedom, when they said your hunger for truth was just immaturity. You stayed even when your presence became the container for their limitations, their fears, and their judgments. But staying has cost you, Sagittarius. Piece by piece, your soul has been unraveling under the weight of expectations that were never yours to carry. Now God is intervening. Not to exile you but to liberate you. This sacred separation is not punishment. It is protection. It may feel like loss, but it is alignment. You are not being pushed out because you failed them. You are being pulled forward because you have completed your part in their story. Sagittarius, your life has always been about blazing trails, about seeking higher truth. You weren't born to remain confined in places that don't honor your spirit. You were born to expand, to fly, to chase horizons unseen. This moment is your cosmic turning point. The breaking you feel is not destruction. It is transformation. The divine is calling you to leave not in bitterness, not in shame, but with reverence. Just as the arrow must leave the bow to find its mark, you must release the old to step into the life your spirit has been aching for. Gate 1, the inner realization. The fire that cannot be contained. Sagittarius, you've always felt that quiet tension whenever you were around your family. It wasn't always spoken aloud, but it lived in the pauses, in the silences between words, in the subtle ways your spirit felt like it had to fold itself smaller to fit. Maybe you noticed it first as a teenager, when your dreams stretched beyond the neighborhood you grew up in. You spoke of travel, of studying abroad, of exploring new cultures, of writing a book that would change lives. And what did you hear? Be realistic. Why can't you just settle down? Why do you always want something more? It hurt you, Sagittarius, not because you didn't love them, but because your fire was dismissed as immaturity, your hunger for truth mistaken for recklessness. Your family wanted safety, predictability, the kind of stability that lives inside four walls and routines. But you, Sagittarius, you were born under the archer's bow, destined to stretch beyond boundaries. You don't breathe well inside cages, even the golden ones. You need skies, horizons, the open air of possibility. And when you couldn't find that inside the home you were born into, your soul began to ache. Think back. Can you remember those moments? Sitting in a family dinner where the conversation circled endlessly around bills, gossip, obligations? You tried to contribute, but your thoughts were on philosophy, on meaning, on the mysteries of the stars. You felt the disconnect, that aching gulf between what you longed to talk about and what everyone else wanted to keep safe and familiar. And when you spoke, sometimes they laughed, sometimes they dismissed you with a wave of the hand. They didn't mean to break your spirit, Sagittarius, but they could not understand it. And slowly you learned to hide that fire, to tuck away your dreams, to shrink your words. But a fire can never stay hidden for long. You felt it rise again in your late 20s or maybe in your 30s, when the cycles of life pressed heavier. Maybe you married young because it was expected, maybe you took on a job to please the family, maybe you lived under a roof that wasn't truly yours. And every day something inside you whispered, this is not your final place. You woke up restless, you felt drained, and sometimes you even blamed yourself. Why can't I just be content? Why can't I stay where I am and be grateful? But Sagittarius, don't you see? That very restlessness is divine. It is not ingratitude, it is guidance. Your soul was whispering what your family could not. You were meant for more. God placed in you the fire of expansion, the courage to walk away from what no longer fits, the clarity to recognize when loyalty becomes a prison. You see, many Sagittarians grow up as the different one in their family. Maria, a Sagittarius I once spoke with, told me how she was always criticized for her wanderlust. When she saved money to travel, her relatives mocked her for being irresponsible. When she chose to study abroad, they called her selfish. But Maria told me something profound. She said, "Every time they tried to shame me for leaving, my heart reminded me. My leaving is not betrayal, it's survival." And later, when she built a career connecting people across cultures, her family finally understood. But she had to walk away first. And maybe your story is different, Sagittarius, but the theme is the same. You've been asked to shrink, to stay, to sacrifice your joy for the comfort of others. And for years you complied, thinking that was love. But love does not demand that you cut off your wings. Real love honors the flight. And now the divine is making it too heavy to ignore. The weight of silence at home, the hollowness of conversations, the guilt that rises when you even think about leaving. All of it is part of the preparation. God is saying, you have fulfilled your part. You've held space long enough. You've tried to heal patterns that were never yours to heal. Now it is time to walk. And Sagittarius, this realization is painful. Because leaving family, even when they don't truly see you, feels like betrayal. You wonder, will they think I'm abandoning them? Will they say I've changed? And the truth is, yes, they will. They may never understand that your leaving is not about rejecting them, but about answering God's call to honor your soul. You were never meant to carry generational chains. You were meant to break them, to carve a path others will one day follow. Picture this. You are at the edge of a vast forest, your family behind you urging you to stay where it's safe. But before you stretches a horizon painted in gold, the unknown calling with a song only you can hear. You hesitate. You look back at the familiar faces, the walls you've always known, the weight of belonging that never truly fit. And then you look forward and your spirit leaps. That moment, that choice is where your destiny begins. Sagittarius, the first act of liberation is listening to yourself again. Trusting the restless ache inside you as sacred. Remember those times you silenced your truth to keep peace? Each of those moments was your soul quietly dimming. But now, every fiber of your being is calling you back to authenticity. No more pretending. No more apologizing for your fire. No more playing roles in a story that doesn't belong to you. And this is where Gate 1 leaves you. In the recognition that you cannot stay. That staying will cost you your spirit, but leaving will give you back your soul. This is not rebellion. It is remembrance. The remembrance of who you are. Sagittarius, the archer, guided not by obligation, but by destiny. Gate 2, the shedding. Releasing what no longer fits. Sagittarius, once you realize you cannot stay, the next step begins quietly, almost invisibly. It is not a dramatic exit, not at first. Instead, it feels like a slow unraveling. The meals that once tasted familiar no longer comfort you. The voices around the table sound louder, harsher, or strangely distant. Even laughter feels heavy, like it is layered with something unspoken. And you begin to notice the very places you once called home now drain you. It starts subtly. A conversation that used to amuse you suddenly feels suffocating. An old joke that once made you smile now stings. You sit in the living room and realize your body is tense, your breath shallow, your mind already drifting elsewhere. And the thought comes, what if I don't belong here anymore? That question is terrifying, Sagittarius, but it is also holy. Because it signals that the shedding has begun. The divine is loosening your ties, not with violence, but with subtle shifts that you can no longer ignore. You may feel guilt rising. Perhaps your family asks why you are so quiet, why you no longer join in with the same energy. They may tease you for being distant, accuse you of being ungrateful, or suggest you've changed. And they're not wrong, you have changed. You've outgrown the vibration of what no longer serves you. Think of a snake shedding its skin. It doesn't hate the old skin. It simply cannot live inside it anymore. And Sagittarius, this is your season of shedding. You will notice the signs. Conversations feel shallow while your soul craves depth. Old responsibilities drain you, while new visions stir with excitement. Familiar routines feel like cages, while silence and solitude bring relief. People's words echo with judgment you can no longer swallow. Don't resist these shifts. They are not punishments, they are confirmations. The discomfort you feel is not rejection. It is realignment. I remember a woman named Susan, also a Sagittarius, who told me how she started dreading family gatherings. For years she forced herself to attend, smiling through the same repetitive cycles of gossip, criticism, and expectation. But one evening she realized she had spent the entire dinner silently repeating a mantra to herself. "I don't belong here anymore," she said. It felt like betrayal at first. But then I realized it was my soul finally telling the truth. Not long after, Susan moved to another city, started her own small business, and found a community of people who shared her vision. Her family still doesn't understand, but she finally understands herself. And you, Sagittarius, will feel the same. The shedding is messy, yes. It will bring tears, confusion, and the ache of nostalgia. You will remember the warmth of childhood moments, the rare times you felt seen, the comfort of tradition. And part of you will want to go back to stay small just to keep the peace. But peace bought with self-betrayal is not peace. It is imprisonment. This is why God is intervening. He knows your loyalty is fierce. Left to your own choice, you might never leave, always finding another excuse to stay. But the divine will not allow your soul to shrink any longer. You will feel jobs ending, relationships shifting, doors closing. You may even feel strangely isolated, like the people you leaned on are suddenly distant. It is not cruelty, it is protection. Spirit is clearing space so you can step into what's waiting. And in this process, Sagittarius, you will grieve. Not only for your family, but for the version of you that lived only to please them. That version deserves a funeral. You don't need to bury her in shame but in reverence. She was the one who carried the weight, who endured the misunderstanding, who tried again and again to translate her soul into a language they could understand. But now she has done her part. It is time for you to let her rest. As the shedding continues, you will begin to crave silence. Alone in your room, you may feel strangely at peace for the first time. You may log off from certain conversations, ignore the call to defend yourself, or simply delete a message you'll never send. This is not coldness, Sagittarius. This is healing. These quiet rebellions are your soul reclaiming its breath. And yes, there will be guilt. The old urge will whisper. Call them, explain yourself, prove that you're still good. But hear me, you do not owe explanations for choosing peace. You are not abandoning them. You are remembering yourself. Sagittarius, this shedding is not about rejecting your family. It is about releasing the roles that required your suffering. The loyal child, the peacemaker, the dreamer who stayed small to make others comfortable. Those disguises no longer fit. Let them fall away. And here is the sacred truth. Every time you release, you make room. Room for the people who will meet you as you are, not as you had to be. Room for connections that don't exhaust you. Room for mornings filled with joy instead of obligation. Room for a life that feels like your own. So breathe deeply, Sagittarius. The shedding is not the end. It is the holy preparation. You are being carved into something freer, truer, brighter. And though the ache of detachment may feel like heartbreak, it is not. It is birth. Gate 3, the test. When the past calls you back. Sagittarius, every great shedding is followed by a test. It comes quietly, unexpectedly, like a knock at the door when you finally settled into silence. Just as you begin to feel lighter, freer, and more yourself, the past stirs. A phone call, a sudden memory, a family voice reminding you of the role you once played. And the ache returns. You see, the universe knows how fiercely loyal you are. Sagittarius, loyalty is both your beauty and your burden. You would rather carry someone else's pain than see them suffer. You would rather bend than break the bond. And because of this, the past will call to you, not to punish you, but to prove that you have truly changed. It may sound like guilt. Maybe I was too harsh. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I should give them one more chance. It may sound like obligation. Family is family. I owe them. Or it may sound like longing. I miss the warmth of belonging, even if it was imperfect. But Sagittarius, hear me, this is the test. It is not a sign that you were wrong to leave. It is not a punishment for being bold. It is the universe asking, will you choose yourself this time? I remember Maria, another Sagittarian soul, who had finally stepped into her own life after years of being the fixer in her family. She began painting again, something she had buried since childhood. She found joy in her mornings, drinking tea in silence. But then one evening her sister called crying, begging her to mediate a family dispute. For a moment Maria felt the old urge. Drop everything, return to her role, sacrifice her peace. But she paused, took a breath and whispered to herself, I am no longer the healer who bleeds. She told her sister gently but firmly. I can't step back into that role anymore. I love you, but I choose peace. That night she cried, but not from guilt. From relief. This is exactly what your test will look like, Sagittarius. The old roles will stretch out their hands, asking you to wear them again. And every part of you will want to because you've worn them for so long they feel like second skin. But second skin is still dead skin. It no longer carries life. So how do you pass this test? By remembering. Your worth is not tied to their recognition. Your softness is not a flaw. It is a sacred compass. You are not abandoning love, you are redefining it. God will not leave you unequipped. Spirit is already fortifying your boundaries. You will notice the difference. The old triggers don't pierce you as deeply. The guilt doesn't linger as long. The ache of leaving no longer feels like drowning, it feels like breathing. Sagittarius, imagine standing at the edge of a forest. Behind you is the old path. Familiar but narrow, filled with thorn bushes that always scratched your skin. Ahead of you is a trail you've never walked before. It looks uncertain, yes, but sunlight filters through the trees, and the air feels different, lighter, cleaner. This is the test. Will you step forward into the unknown? Or turn back to the thorn path just because it's familiar? Some will not understand your choice. They will say you've changed, and they are right. You've stopped apologizing for your truth. You've stopped bleeding just to prove you belong. You've stopped silencing the fire inside you just to keep others warm. And that change is sacred. Do not fall for the illusion that you must go back to be good. True goodness is not found in self-abandonment. True love is not proven by pain. Sagittarius, you are not walking away from family. You are walking toward a love that does not require you to betray yourself. The test will return more than once. Perhaps an invitation to a gathering, where you know the old judgments will return. Perhaps a message reminding you of duty. Perhaps even your own nostalgia whispering, was it really that bad? But in these moments, return to your breath. Remember the lightness you felt when you shed the old skin. Remember the ocean of freedom that Spirit showed you. This is your baptism, Sagittarius. Not in water but in identity. Each time you say no to the old patterns, you say yes to your soul. Each time you resist the trap of guilt, you strengthen your sanctuary. Each time you choose silence instead of defense, peace instead of performance, you reclaim another piece of yourself. And here lies the secret. When you pass this test, the universe opens doors you never knew were waiting. Soul mirrors arrive. Friends, mentors, companions who understand your depth without translation. New opportunities align not because you begged for them but because you finally made space for them. And for the first time, Sagittarius, you will feel what belonging truly means. So when the past calls, pause. Place your hand on your heart. And whisper, I am not who I was. I will not return to cages I have already outgrown. Because this, Sagittarius, is how you pass the test. And once you do, the world ahead will never look the same. Gate 4: the becoming. Stepping fully into your sanctuary. Sagittarius, once you have passed the test of the past, something extraordinary begins to unfold. At first it's subtle. So quiet you may miss it if you're not paying attention. The fatigue that clung to you like a shadow starts to lift. The confusion in your chest softens. You begin to move differently, not scanning rooms for danger, not bracing for judgment, but standing as though the earth itself supports you. This is the beginning of your sanctuary. And the sanctuary is not just a place, it is a way of being. For so long, Sagittarius, you lived as though belonging was something to be earned. You translated your wild spirit into pieces others could digest. You dimmed your fire so it wouldn't scorch those who feared its brightness. You carried the silence of your family, hoping that if you absorbed enough of their wounds, maybe, just maybe, they would love you without condition. But belonging built on performance is not belonging. It is exile in disguise. Now God is returning you to the belonging you were always meant for. The belonging that requires no translation, no shrinking, no self-betrayal. You will notice it in small things. The way your breath deepens when you wake in the morning, no longer dreading the day. The joy of laughing without scanning the room to see who approves. The calm that washes over you when you sit in silence and instead of loneliness, you feel peace. The delight of being with people who do not question your depth, but cherish it. These moments are not coincidences, they are confirmations. The sanctuary is already forming around you. And soon, Sagittarius, you will begin to attract your soul family, the people who feel like recognition, like home in a language your heart forgot it knew. They will not ask you to justify your intuition or dilute your vision. They will meet you in your wildness, in your silence, in your tears. To them, your sensitivity will not be a burden, but a gift. Your fire will not be too much. It will be a light they are drawn to. I think of Susan, another Sagittarian soul who, after walking away from a toxic family dynamic, spent months in solitude. She thought she had lost everything. But slowly life brought new faces into her orbit. A friend who sat with her in silence without filling it with judgment. A mentor who encouraged her wild dreams instead of dismissing them. A community where laughter was free, not bartered. It felt like stepping into sunlight after years underground, she told me. This, Sagittarius, is what waits for you. But here is the deeper truth. Sanctuary is not only external. It is born within you first. You are the sanctuary. You are the safe space. You are the wild field where your soul runs free. And once you embody this, the outer sanctuary will naturally align. You may still feel the echoes of the old life. A photo, a memory, a smell pulling you back. You may still wonder, did I do the right thing? In those moments, return to your breath. Place your hand over your heart and whisper, I am not leaving love behind. I am walking toward a love that does not wound me. Sanctuary does not mean your life will be free of pain, but it means pain will no longer define you. It will pass through you, not root itself in you. Sanctuary means your joy will no longer be conditional. It will bloom quietly, even in ordinary moments. Watering a plant, hearing your favorite song, watching the sunset. And here lies the miracle, Sagittarius. When you stop bleeding for others, your presence itself becomes healing. You radiate peace without effort. You inspire others simply by standing fully in your truth. You become the very mirror of divine softness in a world obsessed with survival. This is the becoming. This is you remembering who you are. Not the fixer, not the dreamer who drowns to stay connected, but the healer who shines by simply being whole. The universe is whispering now. Sagittarius, welcome home. You are no longer bound by pain disguised as loyalty. You are free. You are whole. And your sanctuary is already here. Conclusion, final affirmation, and welcome home. Sagittarius, after walking through the gates of intuition, truth, release, and becoming, you arrive here. At the threshold of your new life. Look back for a moment, not with regret but with reverence. Every wound you carried, every silence you endured, every moment of doubt was not wasted. They were the sacred fires that forged your strength. You thought you were breaking, but in truth you were being reborn. This is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of your sacred homecoming. The family that could not understand you does not define you. The betrayals that once left you trembling do not bind you. The silence that haunted you has now become your ally. A sanctuary where your soul can finally breathe. Remember this truth. You are not leaving love behind. You are walking toward love that doesn't ask you to bleed to prove it's real. The divine is not pushing you away but pulling you home to yourself. Your wild spirit, your laughter, your tears, your silence, these are not flaws. They are holy maps guiding you back to your true essence. And now, Sagittarius, I want you to speak this affirmation aloud, as if the universe itself is listening. I am no longer tied to pain disguised as loyalty. I release the need to be understood by those who cannot see my heart. I choose peace. I choose alignment. I choose me. Sparkles. Take a deep breath. Feel how light your chest becomes when you no longer carry what was never yours. This is the freedom you've longed for. This is the love you've been waiting for. And most of all, this is the sanctuary you were always meant to build. Not just for yourself, but for others who will find safety in your presence. Sagittarius, your journey is only beginning. From here, the world opens wide before you. Vast as the sky you were born under. Walk forward with courage. Walk forward with faith. Walk forward knowing that you are not lost. You are becoming. Welcome home, Sagittarius. Welcome home to yourself.